Welcome to a new daily top Askreddit video. Today's topic: how much time needs to pass before grave robbing turns into archaeology? There's also a methodology component to it. Regardless of the age of the remains, if I woom up with a metal detector, dig a hole and yoik out anything of value, that's grave robbing. If I fight for months for planning approval, record every detail of the site in obsessive detail, then refill any holes carefully when the funding has run out even though there's still more to discover, that's archaeology. Plus archaeology's not just graves. Deleted. Note to thieves, write that shit down. And dress up like an archaeologist. That's archaeology. It isn't just digging, he said with distress. Meticulous planning you've based on a guess. It isn't just begging for funding anew. He whispered, unhappy. It's paperwork too. I have a sprog poem of my own. Thank you. Today's been rather shit, so this has made it a damn sight better. I actually had to look this up once for reasons. It's 100 years or when the deceased has no remaining living relatives, whichever comes first. Wow, I didn't know there was an actual answer, I just thought it was a funny question, lol. There's an answer for every reasonable question, it's just a matter of if anyone knows to give it to you. In North America, archaeologists have to be extremely careful with any kind of Native American burial. Nowadays it's more and more common that archaeologists might get a chance to look at a burial, but they put it back in place as best as they can when they are done. So they study the burial but take nothing from it. This is because the living ancestors of these ancient people still like to honor their dead. The vast majority of archaeology undertaken is developer-led, meaning the site is only being dug because it's going to be developed for housing / industry / quarrying, etc. The site is essentially going to be trashed. There is no possibility of putting things back because the site will be built on and the ground irretrievably altered by heavy machinery. Full archaeological excavation is generally seen as a last resort where preservation in situ isn't possible. The idea of excavation for excavation's sake is a bit old-fashioned these days, and most reputable archaeologists would agree that it's better to leave things in the ground as they are rather than disturb them for no reason. In Beijing, when they were digging their public train / subway lines, they found a bunch of prehistoric humans and their artifacts. Today, the stop in question, Wagfujig, has a small Paleolithic museum composed of objects they found on the site. I found it by accident when I visited over a decade ago. It's nestled into a shopping plaza. I guess you can say the answer. Underscore is buried somewhere in this thread. I don't have an award, but I wish I did. Here now you do. Please Google Kiwik Man. Could be thousands of years depending on the relatives. Interestingly, Utsi the Iceman also has living relatives. Around 19 in Austria. It's possible one of these men is a direct descendant, meaning an unbroken lineage for 5,300 years. Utsi is absolutely fascinating to me, I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a great case study in forensics, and how scientists can easily manipulate the results of their findings in order to circumnavigate laws pertaining to the ownership of burial remains. Like 20 minutes. Like while they're still warm. I hope I've at least gone cold before I'm buried. As an archaeologist, I think this is a very weird question. As a grave robber, I think this is a legit question. Answer the question, grave robber. I'm a hobby archaeologist and I think like 10 minutes after the funeral. I'm an archaeologist, currently conducting postgraduate research focusing on early medieval trade in the North Atlantic, which is a fancy way of saying Viking fishermen. As others have said, it's not a matter of time as much as it is intent. Grave robbing is an unsanctioned, for-profit endeavor. Archaeology is a legally permitted, scientific examination for the purpose of understanding the past. Generally speaking, exhumation of recently interred remains for those purposes is forensic, rather than archaeological, despite similar methodology as it's usually conducted in the course of a criminal investigation. Contrary to the popular imagination, burial archaeology is probably only about 10% of the science, if that. Most of it is mundane shit like analyzing fish bone assemblages. One man's trash is another man's treasure. Literally for archaeologists. Finding a trash pit is a literal treasure in archaeology. I'm an archaeologist, but I usually deal with human remains, but I've seen my colleagues so happy when they found a trash pit. I think that's how it's called in English, sorry, not my first language. They have so much historical information stored. I'm an archaeologist. It depends on where you live. In the US, most, if not all states have laws prohibiting the purposeful disturbance of burials. This includes ones that are 2 years in the ground to 1,000 years. Native American burials are further protected by federal laws. If you're an archaeologist and you come across a burial on a site, you need to notify the county coroner, the local police, your state's historic preservation office, and potentially the local Native American tribe. They will make determinations as to its approximate age and if an investigation is needed, what happens to the remains, or if there is a possibility /need for notification of next of kin. Then you dig it up. Most of the time, it's pretty straightforward and it is dug up. Generally speaking, as an archaeologist in the US you don't go looking for burials to purposely dig them up unless there is a good reason, since it triggers all sorts of laws and questions of ethics. Generally speaking, as an archaeologist in the US you don't go looking for burials to purposely dig them up unless there is a good reason, since it triggers all sorts of laws and questions of ethics. This is true in Europe too. The reason why we have comparatively more modern archaeological excavation of human remains is because archaeological oversight of development projects is more strict, and because urban areas have generally seen continual development for at least 1,000 years or more. Until all the living relatives at the time of death are dead. But then there's the obvious problem of only children with no children themselves with few relatives, so that kind of makes sense. Maybe long enough so that no one alive knows that the grave was a relative. Exactly, then I guess you're not potentially hurting anyone living. I'm gonna go out on the edge and say number. Like many places have cemeteries that have everyone basically dead in the family and over 100+ years old. It's still owned by towns, parish or whatever. If you just went and dug up a body, it'll still be a crime regardless if all the living relatives are dead. There are permissions and legal shit needed regardless of how many years passed. Even Egyptian mummies and Chinese dig site over 4,000 years old still need permission from the respectful governments to even dig, let alone claim anything. I wasn't saying that you didn't need permission from the relevant bodies. Sorry if I wasn't clear. I meant like, how does the relevant body judge if it's too soon or not? And obviously other factors will come into play, such as cultural heritage, disturbance of the environment, etc. If you're opening the grave to make money, you're a grave robber. If you're spending money to open it, you're an archaeologist. It isn't time, it is intent. Grave robbing is to plunder the grave for valuables. Excavating an archaeological site is to learn. British laughing in the distance. https://r/Askreddit.com/comments/kfufco https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/comments/jjb11d https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/jj9ahu https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/jj5edi https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/jj09cc https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/j7ceug https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/j7ai8c https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/j5uqcr https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/j09anm https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/is1spb https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/iqqpp0 https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/ifk9sk https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/i0xfrj https://www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/htoskiem https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/hw9j05 https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/h9htig https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/gmw9ac https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/gj2uu1 https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/gdmjv7 https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/fsfha1 https www.reddit.com/r/Askreddit/comments/fisu